All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday. It's a little bit of a cold, rainy day here in Vancouver, but again, sometimes that happens in this part of the world. But you'll be happy to know if you live here that spring is actually around the corner. And so again, in maybe another month, you'll start to see flowers coming up and leaves on the trees poking out. So, just another few weeks and it'll start to turn around. For Canada, that's a pretty short winter. I was just saying, where I'm from in Edmonton, they won't have spring until late April, early May. It'll be snow and cold until then. So we're gonna get off easy and good morning. We're gonna get off easy and transition into spring in a few weeks, I think, anyway. All right, let me say hello to some people who are here. So Nicole is here, so good morning, Nicole. Ryan's here, good morning, Ryan. Sarah's here, good morning, Sarah. Tushinsana is here, good morning. Not yet, but I'll talk about that probably tomorrow, because I'm not quite ready to talk about it today, but I will talk about it tomorrow, I think. I'm here, good morning, Mike. Shania is here, good morning. And Simrat is here, good morning, Simrat. And Abby's here, good morning, Abby. So let's dive in, shall we? Oh, right. The first thing we have to do is finish watching Mean Girls, right? I almost forgot about that. So that's what we'll do here. I think we've got, I don't know, Scotty's late, so he's going to be crushed. Come on, Imelder. Yeah, Scotty's going to be crushed that he missed it. But maybe let's give him a little bit of let's give Scotty a little bit of help here and just talk very quickly about some of the questions I asked you before we get closure on this movie. So we said that what I'm trying to shine a light on here in this film is socialization and social norms and how these things operate, right? And so there's numerous social groups in the school. They're all kind of divided up by certain types of identities, so people's gender or their race or ethnicity, their hobbies, and their kind of level of coolness. Good morning, Nicholas. Their level of coolness, right? And that coolness, we said, can be determined by, there he is. Good morning, Scotty. That level of coolness can be determined by people's socioeconomic status, right? So how much money they have. And Gretchen, if you remember, Gretchen is trying to, she's a higher economic status, right? Like she probably comes from a wealthy family, but she also tries to talk about her social status too. Do you remember when she's in the principal's office and she mentions that her father or grandfather was the inventor of toaster strudel? Yeah. Do you know what toaster strudel is? No, they're kind of not, good morning. They're not as popular, they were popular like 20 years ago or so, but they're kind of like a Pop-Tart. You know Pop-Tarts, right? Pop-Tarts? Yeah. They're kind of like a Pop-Tart, but they're a little more like a strudel or a Danish kind of thing. Pop-Tarts are like cakey or something like that. So the toaster strudels are a little different, but they're the same thing. They're kind of rectangles, and you put them in the toaster and heat them up and get a huge sugar jolt at breakfast. But anyway, that's what she's trying to say, right? So, my father, the inventor of toaster strudel, so she's trying to say that she's of a higher social class as well, right? Because her father or grandfather is famous for inventing toaster strudel, which is not really something to be famous for, but she's trying it anyway. Anyway, so these social groups are based on a bunch of different things, and the plastics are, the group that we're most familiar with or that we spend the most time with, and they have a set of rules, right? And most of those rules have to do with appearance, right? And how they present themselves to the world, because that group has a very strong identity, right? They're very easily definable as, the most popular, fashionable, prettiest girls in the high school, right? They're the queens, they're the queen bees of the school, right? And so they have a lot of rules to make sure that they maintain that status, and the rules are very clearly enforced, right? And again, if somebody violates a rule, then there are sanctions, right? There's punishments for that. And interestingly, the punishment even happens to the leader, right? Regina is kind of the leader of the group, and even she gets punished, right? So the rules actually become more powerful than the individual group members, right? They're kind of, and that's that socially constructed thing, right? If we all believe something to be true, then it becomes very powerful in society. And you can see that happening within that group in the plastics. They all believe in the rules so much that the rules actually become more powerful than Regina is, even though Regina is the one who made them up, right? And interestingly, she probably made them up to kind of control the other girls and get them to do what she wanted them to do. But now the rules have become more powerful even than her, and she's punished by them, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, that identity piece is important, right? And so Gretchen said it's better to be in a social group than out of one, right? And so out of a group, she would be, she'd be alone, maybe she'd be lonely, maybe she wouldn't know, who to sit with or where to go. Maybe a bunch of people would dislike her because she's been awful to them as a member of the plastics. But also, being a plastic is part of her identity, right? Being part of that super group at the top of the high school, that's an important part of who she is. And to lose that might be a little bit traumatic for her, right? Who is she if not a plastic? Who is she if not a member of that group? Sure.
At the end of the day, what if they choose to name plastics instead of something else?
Ooh, well, let's see. It's interesting because help me out with this, because this is a good question. I didn't pay attention to this in the movie, and maybe you probably didn't either because I didn't ask you to. But is the name plastic? Is that something that they call themselves, or is that something that the rest of the school calls them? Yeah, we don't ever hear any of those girls refer to themselves as plastics? Because I think, is it only Janice who calls them plastic? I think she calls them the plastics, in the cafeteria when we're kind of meeting everyone, and she says it when when her and Damien show up at the party and she's hanging out of the sunroof, and she says, "You're plastic. You're cold, hard, shiny plastic," right? And so maybe I think that's true. Maybe the girls don't call themselves that, but the other students do. And why do you think they do? Why did they choose to call them that? Do you think?
From what I believe is that plastics are generally flexible, shiny, hard, and pretty versatile.
Plastics are pretty versatile, right? They are shiny, right? They are hard. Are things that are made of plastic, are those, how do we think about those things?
I think in order to understand the reason why they named the Mean Girls plastics, we need to understand about properties of plastics first.
Okay. Are we gonna go into the science of plastics? Okay.
I don't know, because that's the only thing I can think of right now.
Maybe like plastic like dolls.
It's what?
Plastic like dolls, like Barbie dolls.
Oh, right. So okay. So that's good too. Yeah. So I think the coldness and the shininess are important. That's important. That dolls are often made of plastic. Abby says here that they're fake, right? Things that are made of plastic are often, things that are standing in for the real thing, right? It's not wood, it's plastic that looks like wood, right? Or it's not metal, it's plastic that looks like metal, right? And so often we substitute plastic in for real materials. Plastics are real material too, but for kind of more natural materials, plastic is like the substitute, right? The synthetic version, right? And Nicole says here, yeah, plastic materials look good, but there's kind of often there's a fakeness to that. And again, it's a bit of a, you may agree with this and you may not. It's kind of a cultural connotation, and it's also, I think, it's an older idea, right? Like it belongs to a generation or so back when plastics were new, and so lots of things were made out of wood and metal and more natural materials, and then plastic was like, oh, this cheap new material that's not as strong as wood or metal. Of course, now everything is made of plastic, and we don't care about durability because we just throw everything away when it wears out. But a few decades ago, plastic was seen as kind of fake, right? It's not the genuine thing. It's the imitation thing. And so, yeah, maybe that's why the rest of the high school calls them plastic, right? Because they're cold, right? So they're mean. They're shiny in that they're very, fashionable and attractive. But also they're fake in a way, right? They're not the real thing. They're not what they appear to be. The other thing that might be, actually, Sophie, to jump off of your comment there, is that if you think of a Barbie doll or something like that, or another type of doll, they're hollow, right? There's nothing inside. So they're kind of, those dolls are cast in a way that they're empty. They're hollow inside. And maybe that says something too, right, about how the rest of the school perceives these girls, right? That they're cold, they're shiny, they're superficial, they're fake, and they're hollow, right? There's nothing inside, which is actually that's a pretty ugly term, actually, right? So maybe it's not surprising that the girls don't call themselves plastic, because it's not a flattering term, right? We said that Katie had started to act like Regina, even though she was trying to destroy Regina. And why did we say that was? Because that's weird.
Well, because the plan is to fake being one in order to sabotage the entire group. But the issue is that it may have gone on for too long. And she's so into it that it just makes her a completely new member of the group.
Yeah, Katie did kind of lose herself in the process, right? And the plan was to pretend to be one of them and destroy Regina at the same time, right? But the plan seems to have gone awry a little bit. It seems to have gone off the rails a bit, and Katie lost track of who she was and what she was doing.
She forced herself to be in one of those groups, and I think classically was more normal than other groups. So
I think. Do you think that there were some things that Katie liked about being in the group? Yeah.
Or maybe she's new to such a society which she was attracted to, and she ended up being one of them.
Yeah, and I think that's probably true. Is that she was new to that society, right? And so.
Jungle, and she found out there.
Yeah, and so initially she didn't fit anywhere, right? And so she managed to fit in with this group, and this group has things going for it, right? It's got a lot of power. Everyone worships you at the school and thinks you're just the greatest thing, and so that might be pretty intoxicating, right? That might feel pretty good for Katie, and that might be part of the reason why she gets lost, right? But what was I saying yesterday about Regina? She's powerful in a certain way. What is she she's a powerful what?
Influential.
Huh?
She's influential.
I cannot hear you.
Too influential.
Oh, she's very influential, yes. And I used a kind of a semi-fancy term. What did I say?
Agent of socialization.
Yeah, she's very influential. She's a very powerful agent of socialization, right? She's got so much social power, and she's kind of psychologically manipulative as well, that Katie actually gets socialized by her while she's trying to destroy her, right? Which is weird, but also I think very reflective of the way humans are, right? We do absorb social messages and act on them without really being conscious of what's going on sometimes, right? Sometimes we're acting on things that we've learned, and we didn't really know that we learned them, and we don't really know that we're acting on them, but it's happening anyway. And so it's happening here for Katie in a very easy to see way. But what's happening, I think, is not quite so strange when you look at how humans are, right? Yeah, and so again, Regina is a powerful agent of socialization, and is so powerful, in fact, that the rules that she creates, actually, she's punished by, right? So when she wears the sweatpants to school on Monday, the girls enforce the rule. And again, interestingly, the rule has become more powerful than Regina is, right? They all have bought into it and believed in the rules so strongly that not even Regina can dismiss them, right? And she tries to, right? Regina says, no, those rules are just made up anyway, right? And she's the one who made them up. But the girls are like, no, can't sit with us, right? And again, that's a good lesson too, because that's very much how humans are, right? With things that they believe. People believe things so strongly that they become just the way things are. No, you can't do that. No, you can't act like that. No, you can't be that. Why not? Because that's how things are, right? That's the rule. And there's no rationale or explanation. It's just that's how things are. And that's exactly what happens to Regina, right? There's no reason why you can't wear sweatpants on any day, right? That's a ridiculous rule. It has no rationale to it, but it doesn't matter, right? Because the rule is believed by the girls, and they enforce it, right? Okie dokie. So you want to watch the rest?
I have one last question.
Absolutely.
When you've been socialized in like a friend group, how do you, I don't know what the correct term for this, but how do you get away from the group and stop being a member of them?
In socialization terms, or simply like you're hanging out with people that you kind of don't want to hang out with anymore?
I think it's both of them.
Both? Well, let me put this question out to the audience. How do you do that if you find you're hanging out with people that maybe a little while ago they were cool, and now you're kind of getting to the point where you're like, oh, I don't think they're so cool anymore. I'm not into these. What do you do? Run? What's that? Run away screaming? Ah! What do you?
Maybe you start maintaining your distance from them slowly, then you get off the group.
Yeah, you kind of back away a little bit slowly, right? Maybe maybe they invite you to do something, and maybe you say yes, but then the next time you say no, and maybe the time after that you say no, and maybe then you say yes, but you say no again, and you kind of, yeah, you could just kind of step back a little bit, right? Now, what else can you do? Just like, just go? Just stop, just block their numbers and ghost them? Yeah, you can do that.
So have a one-to-one talk until you talk.
Sure, you can try to have a talk with them and address whatever it is that you don't like, or I guess if you don't feel that'll change, you can have a talk and say, look, I'm out. I don't like what you're saying or doing or how you treat me or whatever, and establish this is kind of psychological stuff, but you'll establish a boundary, right? You'll say, look, I don't like what you guys are doing or saying, and I don't want to be part of this. I'm out. see ya, right? You can do that too. So it's a bunch of different ways, right? Whether you want to kind of meet it head on and just tell people directly what you're going to do, or whether you kind of back away slowly, or whether you just, block their numbers and ghost them, right? Any way will work.
And for the last part, I
Mhm.
believe, I'm not really sure. Why did Regina choose to create an entire war zone inside of the school?
Okay, so the question is, why did Regina kind of create a war zone inside the school, right? So one of the last scenes we saw yesterday was Regina kind of gave that burn book to the principal after she fixed it to make it look like she was a victim of the book as well, not the author of it, right? So she gave it to the principal, and then she photocopied all the pages and distributed them throughout the school. And why did she do that? What's that?
She was getting revenge on the girls. The war zone was just like just another thing. That wasn't the main goal, I would say. It's just the effects of it.
I think so too. I think so too. Do you have? Are there other reasons why? So Nasser's answer was that she gave the book to the principal because she wanted revenge on Katie and the other girls, right? So she was trying to get them in trouble by supplying this book to the principal. But then sending around all of the photocopied pages of it, that's just questionable. It's like that line from The Dark Knight. What does Alfred the butler say in Batman? He says, some men just want to watch the world burn.
But I feel like it's also to get, because to Regina, everyone's opinions matter, right? And there was a point where she was wearing the sweatpants. She was at the beginning, she was known as this pretty person, and then after even the girls who eat their feelings, they were you fat ass or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So she obviously cares about what other people think. So now she's throwing it around, so everyone would be oh, these girls wrote this, blah blah blah.
Right.
The girls' opinion of other people will be bad about the new class.
Right. So yeah. So Sophie said, yeah. Regina used to be on the top of the pyramid, right? The highest, the queen bee of the entire school. But then she kind of fell down quite a bit, right? Because even one of the girls who eat their feelings kind of bumped her out of the way and said, watch where you're going, fat ass. And so that's a pretty big drop, right? And so Regina's feeling maybe powerless. She's upset, and so she's gonna get revenge on everyone, and maybe she's gonna try and knock everyone down, right? She's trying to just destroy the social order because she's lost her place on top, right? And so, yeah, it's a very kind of angry, destructive act, right? And again, she's used to be at the top, now she's not, and she's just that's it, I'm gonna burn it all down, right? Which kind of happens a little bit, right? Although, in a very interesting way, she does kind of, well, I guess we'll see it in a few minutes, she does kind of bring about some kind of healing to the community, right? That wasn't her intent, but attempting to burn everything down did get a lot of things out in the open, right? So that people could talk about them. But that's not what she was trying to do. She was trying to hurt everybody, which initially she did as well. Okay, should we watch the last little bit? Yes? Okay. So online people, same thing. We're going to watch the last little bit. Scotty, do you remember where we left off?
That was
When Regina got out of the
that's
school.
when Janice decided to expose Regina.
Right, so they were doing the apologies, the group apologies, and they were falling into each other's arms like a trust exercise. And Janice just revealed that the whole thing was a plot, was a plan, and that they tried to destroy Regina, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, I didn't mean for that to
Oh,
happen.
hang on. No.
Please. Regina, stop!
Okay, not yet. Okay, so online people we'll watch the rest of it, and then we'll come back and chat really quickly, and then we'll have a break. Okay, so I'm gonna let you go to watch that last little bit of the movie. I forget where we left off, but hopefully you'll remember, and then we'll come back and talk. Okay, so be right back. Okay, let's take a quick 10-minute break and then we'll come back and talk, okay? Okay. All right. And we are back. So, what do you think of the movie? 4 stars? 3 stars?
Funny.
2.5? What's that?
It's very funny.
It's very funny. It is well written. Ms. Norbury. Ms. Norbury is Tina Fey. Tina Fey actually screen wrote the film, so she was the writer of all those funny jokes, I think. And she was on Saturday Night Live for a long time, and 30 Rock and other things. So she's pretty funny, and she's written a book, I think, or a couple books. So yeah, she did a good job. Did a good job with this one. Okay, a few important takeaways. So I've asked you those questions. We've talked about some of the answers and things that we should remember with this movie. And don't forget the movie, because we will come back to it. There's more to reference, believe it or not. We'll just learn a few things and then we'll look back at it. So we're not done with it. As I say, it's a good movie for this class. There's a lot of things to chew on, if you will. So number one, we've all been socialized, right? We've all learned social values, social norms, social beliefs, right? And we have them in our societies that we live in, but also within the high school, right? The high school has its own set of beliefs and values and social norms that overlap with larger society, but in some ways are particular to that little high school society, right? Again, we're often socialized without our knowledge or consent. So sometimes people tell us directly what to do and what not to do and what's good and what's bad. And of course, that's kind of the job of our parents or our caregivers when we're very young, right? You tell your kids, no, don't do that, that's bad, or good job, that was really nice that you did that, right? We directly tell kids what's good and what's bad. But as we kind of grow and sort of move out into the world, we start to absorb and learn all kinds of social messages that are implicit, right? They are not clearly communicated to us, but we're clever beings, and so we learn them and absorb them anyway. And they influence our behavior and our perspectives, right? Sometimes in ways that we're not conscious of unless we really pay attention to what we're thinking and why we're thinking it, right? And often we don't, right? Because we're kind of tied up in our day, or we're worried about our assignments or exams, and we don't have time to think about how we think, right? We're just trying to get through the day, right? So if we're not careful, yeah, we'll be acting on these things without really realizing it. Another thing to take from this is that many social rules are arbitrary, but they have a lot of power. There are powerful consequences for violating social rules, even when the social rule is ridiculous and has no clear rationale, right? So Regina, of course, we see her pay the price for breaking a social rule. The rule is ridiculous, doesn't mean anything, but she will suffer for breaking it, right? Most societies have some sort of hierarchy, right? So there are people on the top that have more social or political or economic power, and then there are people further down the ladder with less of those things, right? Less social, political, and economic power. I don't have anything smart to say about the second point. Yes? Can we talk about what? Yeah, we will. When I'm done this. Give me some time. Right. So our social position within that hierarchy does have a lot to do with how society treats us, right? And look at the high school. How you get treated at this high school has a lot to do with where you are in the social hierarchy. If you're a jock or a plastic, people are like worshiping you and falling all over you, right? Like at the beginning of the movie when they were talking about Regina George, and Regina George punched me in the face once. It was awesome, right? That's not a thing that is awesome, right? But they have so much power that people worship them, right? And then, the desperate wannabes or the art freaks or whatever they're called, they're going to get treated like crap because they're at the bottom of the hierarchy, right? And so again, that's similar to society as well, is that people at the top get treated one way, people at the bottom get treated in a different way, right? It's also interesting to think about who's at the top and why they're there, right? And so the plastics are at the top because they're pretty and wealthy and fashionable and confident. And as it turns out, those are all social values, right? We give value to those things. Is it good to be physically attractive? Yeah, we kind of like people who are hot, right? Is it good to be fashionable? Yes, we like it when people are fashionable. We sort of hold them up, right? Do we like people who are confident and rich? Yes, we absolutely do. Mulder's kind of has a skeptical look on his face, but oh, okay. I thought the look on your face was like, I don't believe in that, but that's okay. And again, it's okay if your values differ a little bit, but society seems to value those things, and so those girls are on the top for that reason too. The social groups that we are kind of born into kind of form the frames of our glasses, right? They're the way that we see the world. And so even though we might not agree with the ideas that we absorb them nonetheless, right? Okay, let me just see I just remind myself what I was saying here. Okay, and kind of understanding how this works is important because again, we are socialized to believe that social groups don't matter, right? I think we've kind of been taught that, just be nice to everyone. Everyone's equal. Everyone's the same. Don't be racist. There's no racism here. Let's just behave in a nice way and everything will be okay. And again, that's part of it is true. Like you should be nice to people and kind, and you should try to treat people as equally as you can. But the reality is not that, right? The reality is that social groups do influence our experience of society. And again, I'm not saying that that's right, and I'm not saying it's desirable, but I am saying it's how things currently work. And we have to be able to identify that in order to move forward, right? Can you fix a problem that you don't acknowledge exists? If the roof is leaking and there's water dripping from the ceiling over there, if I pretend that the water is not dripping, can I ever fix it? No, right? The first step is to say, there is a leak in the ceiling, it must be fixed, right? That's the first step. And so if you can't admit that there's a problem, then you can't fix it, right? You can't repair what's wrong. And so again, the social groups we belong to does influence our experience in society, whether we like it or not, right? And we don't have to agree with it, but it kind of is the way it is. Okay, I'm going to jump here. Okay, so now a little bit of a gear switch. Nazra, are you with me? Sophie, are you with me? Okay. Now a little bit of a gear switch. We've been talking about culture. We've been talking about socialization. Now let's talk about two concepts that are going to be critical to the understanding of social justice issues. Opportunity, I was going to say. Not opportunity. Oppression and power. If I asked you just off the top of your head, what does oppression mean? How would you define it to me?
I believe that it is to slow down the progress of something that is considered to be. In my opinion, oppression is an act of slowing down a belief, or maybe halting it.
Okay, so it might have something to do with slowing down something or stopping something, a belief or, okay. What else? What's that?
Or start something. Copy from other people. When you go to a new place, you look at other people and you start to copy them.
Oh, you start to kind of do what they do. That's not it. I don't know what you're thinking of. That's not necessarily it, though. Sorry, but what else do you think oppression might be?
I think it's mistreatment in a way where you're not allowed to like you're not allowed to be normal. You know what I mean? Like there's something like slowly like stopping you from doing things that are considered normal. You know what I mean? I think I'm not explaining that well.
Okay, that's okay.
It's subtle, but over time it grows where you're like
Okay, so it's subtle. Over time, it grows. It's something that Nazra was saying. It's something that kind of keeps you from being normal or existing in a normal state, or something. Okay, I see that. What else would you say it is?
Preventing a specific group of people from exercising their rights.
Okay, so preventing a certain group of people from exercising their rights. Okay. What else? Anything else? How would you define power? That's a more common word, but sometimes it's more difficult to figure out what it means.
A toy for, I don't know, reaching to your goal.
Say again?
A toy for reaching your goal.
Okay, it's for did you say a toy?
Yeah.
A toy for reaching your goal. Okay. Okay. What else? What is power? Okay, and advantages or privileges that you may have, that can be power. It can contribute to your power, absolutely.
is it something you hold? The power is something you hold. It's a thing you
It's a something you have, right? Yeah, something you hold. Good, good, good. Okay, close enough. Well, you're all definitely in the ballpark, right? We're kind of revolving around these things. So that's good. Maybe the first thing I'll say here is remember this, right? And so thankfully I found this on the internet. Katie's map of North Shore High School, right? And so here's the cafeteria map with all of the sort of social groups mapped out. And of course, Janice was nice enough to draw this for Katie so that she would know who's who, right? Now, wonder why that's not working. One of the things I just want to point out very quickly, and because it's useful to remember this too, is that when we're talking about social groups, that society often organizes things into what's called binary opposites. Binary is bi is two, right? So two things that are in opposition to each other. And so often we kind of do this because black and white thinking is easier than more subtle thinking, right? Things are either this or that, right? They're good or bad, hot or cold, up or down, black or white, hot or not, boy or girl, old or young, smart or dumb, right? And so humans and societies often like to try to categorize things based on two opposing ideas, right? Which is pretty useful, but often we tend to think of it not as a spectrum, but as two kind of baskets, right? Or two buckets. And if I've got this thing, it's got to go in one basket. It either goes in the good basket or the bad basket, right? This thing is either, masculine or feminine. This thing is either hot or not, right? And we really want to have clarity and put things in one bucket or another. But what I'll caution you in this course and in life is that often things don't fit in one bucket very well. Some things do. Should you murder other people? For the most part, no, right? So no matter how annoying they are, do not murder them, right? So that can go in the bad bucket. Murder can go in the bad bucket. But a lot of things don't fit so clearly into one or the other. But society wants to kind of categorize things this way anyway. And the other thing I'll point out to you here is that often when we're talking about binary opposites and when we're talking about identity, often we want to define ourselves by what we are and by what we're not. Okay? So if I'm a man, and I am, hopefully you've all gathered that by now. The facial hair should have been a dead giveaway, but just in case, I am a man, right? And so I define myself that way, right? And I define myself as a man because I have these kind of traits and characteristics that my society says a man is or should be, or maybe I aspire to those, right? I'm not quite as muscular or ripped as I should be, but who knows? But I also define myself by what I'm not, right? So in being a man, I am not a woman, right? I am not those things that we associate with femininity, right? And again, there's, of course, gray area, which we'll talk about in another unit or two, but I define myself in both ways, right? I am a man, but at the same time, I'm also not a woman, right? I am a Canadian, and being Canadian means things, right? There's parts of my identity that are Canadian, but I also define myself, as do many other Canadians, that I am not an American, right? These are things that Americans are, and of course these are some stereotypical ideas. These are things that Americans are, and we are not that, right? We're different from them. We're not them, right? And you know, there's some overlap. Let's face it. But you know, we're not that different, right? But in some ways we are, right? And we like to think that we are as well. So us Canadians define ourselves as Canadians. Yes, we're, you know, hockey-loving, maple syrup drinking, polite people in parkas, right? That's who Canadians are. So stereotypical. But we're also not Americans, right? We're not loud, you know, gun-happy, freedom-loving, you know, crazy people or whatever. We're not that, right? So we do both things at the same time, right? We say what we are, but we also say what we're not. Now, it's interesting to think that at Mean Girls, or in the Mean Girls High School, we can understand a lot of the social groups that exist in that way, right? So popular or not, right? Are the jocks popular or not? Popular. Plastics? Very popular, right? The art freaks? No, right? Are they guys or girls? Are the jocks guys or girls? Jocks are football players. Yeah, they're guys, right? The plastics, girls, right? Are they hot or not, right? So we can very clearly understand these groups in terms of binary opposites, right? They've clearly fit into just one category. Again, not all groups work that way. Some groups are, you know, have both genders or multiple genders involved, right? So some are a little more diverse, but some of them are very clearly understandable, right? And of course, we said in real societies, there are similar social categories, right? There's race, there's economic or social class, gender, sexuality, ability. And just like in Mean Girls, those groups have different amounts of power, right? Can we say that? Social groups have, right. So the relationship between those social groups and the power difference between them is what we're going to call oppression, okay? And so this is what we will kind of officially define it as. And as you look at this, you'll probably see some echoes of what you just told me when I asked you what oppression was. And so we'll say here that oppression is a set of either policies, so like kind of government policies, traditions, practices, norms, definitions, explanations. I'm going to throw this fancy word in there, discourses. If you really want to sound smart, use the word discourse, because it's very academic and pretentious. Basically what it means is everything that is said or not said about a certain topic, right? That's what is said around those things is discourse, okay? So, and the idea here is that all of those things work together to systematically exploit one group for the benefit of another one, right? So all of those things, these sort of social policies and norms and explanations and things that people say, all of those things work to advantage one group and to disadvantage another one, Okay, and so the group that is advantaged, the group that benefits, is going to be called the dominant group. The group that is exploited is going to be called the minoritized group. Okay, and so here's a quick chart showing some of these oppressive relationships that you have probably heard about before, right? Racism, I think we have all heard about before. And what is racism? Well, it is an exploitive relationship between white people and between people of color in North America, but you could also make a case for globally, but maybe let's stick with North America right now. In North America, white people have power, right? White people have power. People of color have less. And so there is a relationship between those two groups in which one has advantages and one is disadvantaged, right? And again, I'm not saying that this is right or desirable or the way things should be. I'm just saying it's the way it is. Before we go further, I should also define what we'll say power is. And power has a very simple definition in sociological terms. Power is the ability for someone to get what they want when other people want something different. Yes. So having power is the ability to get what you want when there are other people who want something else, right? So last week I said that we were going to have a quiz on Monday, right? That's what I wanted. Did all of you want a quiz on Monday?
No.
No, you did not. Did we have one?
Yes.
Yes, we did. And we did because I have that power, right? I have power in this room to, decide when the quiz is and give it to you. And you may not like it, and you may want the quiz on another day, or you might not want the quiz at all. But regardless, I have the power to do that, right? And so, and again, we can extend that power definition to anything, right? People like Jeff Bezos, he has the power to make a lot of things happen. And people might not like what he does or what he is, but he's still able to do it anyway, right? Because he has power, right? Donald Trump was able to do a lot of things that people didn't like, and that was because he had power to do so. He could do things even when there are other people who wanted something else, right? So again, it's a pretty simple definition, but all of these groups, all of these dominant groups have power, right? So here in the dominant group, we can see, here in North America anyway, white people have power, whereas people of color have less. Owning class, so people who own property and investments and have lots of money, they have more power than the rest of us do, us middle class or working class or poor people. In terms of gender, cis men, we'll talk about cis and transgender very shortly, but men have power in society and women and people of other genders have less, right? Heterosexuals, people who are straight, they have more power than people who are gay or lesbian or pansexual or asexual or bisexual or other things. Here in North America, anyway, Christians are the ones who have power, right? People who are non-Christian have less. People who are able-bodied have power. And so ability has to do with your physical ability, so the idea that your body works normally, I'll put that in quotes, normally, but also mental ability as well, right? Does your brain function, quote unquote, normally? Or do you have mental health issues or developmental issues or something? Citizens have power in the country that they belong to. People who are more recent immigrants, they have, or perceived to be immigrants, have less power, right? And here again, there's a colonial relationship too. So white settlers, people like me in Canada, we have power at the expense of indigenous people who were here first, right? And this was their land before we decided it was ours, right? Yes.
Why does the suffix ism define the oppression?
Why does the suffix
Yes.
ism? Because what kind of suffix is ism? Ooh, that's a grammatical question that I do not have the answer to. I think there's like an English grammar reason, like answer for that, in terms of this kind of suffix takes a word like race and turns it into an abstract concept that does this or whatever. I think there's an answer there. I just don't know what it is. Yeah. However, but it does do that, right? The suffix does do that. And so all of these are oppressive relationships within society, okay? So we have a few minutes left here, and for the people who are in class, I'd like to just hand back their quizzes. And I do want to review it, but I don't think I'll have time to review it today. So I'll hand them back. I'll post the grades for online people today, and then we'll kind of review it. We'll review the answers tomorrow, because we're a little short on time. We're a little short on time today, and I wanted to sort of end at a convenient spot, which I think I've arrived at, but there's not enough time to review. So I will hand them back to you in class. We will review it tomorrow. But maybe for the moment, I'll say goodbye to you online people, and then when we come back tomorrow, the first thing we'll do is we'll review the quiz, and then we'll kind of go on with oppression, and I've got a reading for you to do that talks about stereotypes and prejudice and discrimination and all these things that we will need to understand, okay? So for online people, I'll let you go for today, and we'll see you tomorrow, okay? So bye-bye.